into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge, and today we are giving you our top 36 Dynasty rookie rankings. Why? Because it's still Dynasty season, and after this NFL draft, the whole landscape of Dynasty changes, and what we wanted to do here is not necessarily give you guys like the straight number rankings, but let's put these players into tiers, because honestly, the number rankings are kind of ridiculous. There's not much change between Dave and I and the general consensus. Let's just get these guys into tiers. Dave, I know you just did an article about this where you put all these players into very unique tiers.
Yeah, not even so much tiers as buckets. Like, it's kind of weird because you could shuffle some of these together.
Just
But
labeling players, labeling people, stereotypes.
basically, yeah, but I think that, like, in Dynasty, like, it's so confusing to just look at a flat list of rankings because there's some teams, as crazy as it may sound, that should trade their Derrick Henrys away for Trey Bensons and Tyrone Tracy's and players like that, because if you're not in a position to contend, you need to get these players off of your rankings. So I think a lot of people, they'll just go to footballguys.com/rankings and click on the Dynasty button and say, okay, well, I need to move up and turn my running back 18 into their running back 16, but that's not always the way it goes. So I kind of look at, breaking up. These are the guys that will work on any build. These are the guys that should be reserved for contenders. These are the guys that should be reserved for rebuilders. Like, these are what you should pay to acquire these players. And more than anything, I mean, it's just a really fun exercise to try to break these guys up into these little tiers. But looking at our consensus tiers, a lot of them naturally kind of fit into these same buckets that I created in this article, which is going to make for a fun discussion.
Yeah, I love how we're sitting here being so forward thinking and progressive. And then now we're just going to generalize on a bunch of players and basically just, drop them all into buckets, label them, typecast them. Sure.
And the top one is pretty obvious. And, like I said, when the tiers that I was working out and the tiers that our consensus came to, our mini consensus between you and I, the top three are identical. Top four, actually. Top five, actually.
Top four.
Top four.
We're going to go back into this. All right. Let's do it. Tier one, these are the blue chips. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Jinty. And all these guys just, like we've been saying, fall into that same bucket because they are the elite athletes. They've got the great workload, at least presumably so, with Ashton Jinty. They've got the draft capital.
I don't know. You're not worried about Raheem Mostert and Sincere McCormick coming in there and taking touches from Jinty?
Don't forget Zamir White.
Yeah.
Don't forget him. Put some respect on it.
There.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not worried about any of these guys. Like, not even a little bit. And honestly, are these the players, since they are blue chips? I've seen some of the trade values for these guys, and it's like 2 first-round picks and a second, right? If you have to put a draft capital value to them. If it's essentially 2 firsts and a second, are these players that you're trying to move, or are you just holding on to them? Could the price ever be higher for guys like this?
So this is where I was confused because, not confused, but where I was really kind of torn apart, because typically in dynasty markets, I am always recommending to sell the most expensive running backs. Just move off of those guys and swap them out for running back or for wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends and safer assets. But this is a little bit different than a typical dynasty landscape. All of these guys, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Ashton Jinty, all drafted inside the top 12 of the NFL draft. All of them are going into this year playing at 23 or younger. So these guys don't have any of the red flags that you typically get with dynasty running backs. A couple of years ago, we were looking at Breece Hall as one of these blue chip prospects, but he was a round 2 guy. He tore his ACL. There were some big red flags there that we should have been concerned about. Christian McCaffrey was a blue chip guy a few years ago. Well, we knew that he was a little bit undersized, and we knew that he had a career of injuries, and that was a red flag. None of these guys, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, or Ashton Jinty, have any red flags. So I think if you can swap them out to get Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, you do that. But that's where my list ends. If you're not getting one of those 7 guys in return, I think that you're better off just keeping these guys, because we're probably looking at 5+ years of production from each of them.
Yeah, as I was doing this exercise, I started to come up with just this idea that I guess has kind of been one of my strategies all along, where I started to say, man, a bunch of these guys that are in tier 2 and tier 3, they're all good players, but they have enough warts on their resume or on their profile that I'm just saying, why don't I want these older guys that are a couple of tiers lower and they're going to cost me nothing? If running backs are essentially just leased cars, and I'm only holding on to them for 2 years. Like, go ahead and just give me the Alvin Kamara's and the Derrick Henrys and the Joe Mixons, and I'm going to trade away some of these bigger name players for guys that have longer sustained values, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, the Brock Bowers at tight end. Like, there's so much of it. So you're right, but I think I are we on the same page here in that these three players are sort of the exception to that rule?
Yes.
Like, you just want to keep them because they are, I don't want to say flawless, but there is a very clean profile here at the running back spot for these three guys.
Exactly. And you look at the other guys over the last 10 years who have garnered similar draft capital. Look at Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley.
Everything
So,
went
like,
great for those guys.
and I mean, like, if we could look at Todd Gurley with the worst case scenario, sure. If one of these guys gets
Leonard Fournette.
knee arthritis, we're going to feel bad about it. And Leonard Fournette, yeah, like Leonard Fournette is the worst case scenario, but he still gave you running back one value for half a decade and had a prolonged career where he went on to Tampa Bay and he was productive there and he was a pass catching machine in Jacksonville. So that's the worst case scenario for these guys is Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette, if you drafted him as a rookie, you were still getting 6 years of RB1 production. And if you're getting 6 years of RB1 production from Ashton Jinty, even if he doesn't hit his high-end range of outcomes, the low-end range of outcomes is still relatively safe.
Yeah, and I think that opens up a whole nother conversation that when you're putting guys in this top tier, are you valuing them based on their low end range of outcomes? Are you valuing them based on how much potential they have on that ceiling side? I think just to not to overextend this conversation too much, these three guys need to be in the top tier of running back rankings. And honestly, I think I'm only trading them if I'm getting a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type player in return. If not, just hold on to them.
Yeah, I think the 7 I listed, the top 3 wide receivers, the top 3 quarterbacks, and Brock Bowers, those are pretty much the only guys that I'd be willing to move off of these guys from. And I think some people might get a little bit too cute and try getting like a package of players in return or something like that. But I just don't want to give away on elite prospects who are still have years of elite production ahead of them.
By the way, in that first tier, no differentiation in rankings between the two of us when we had to list these players out. Let's go to tier number 2, where it starts off with Saquon Barkley at 4, Amarian Hampton at 5, Devon Achane at 6, Jonathan Taylor at 7, Breece Hall at 8, and Kenneth Walker III at 9. And Dave, there's not a lot of dissension between us in this either. Like there's really only, I'd say there's 2 players where I have Devon Achane at 5, you have him at 7. That's not a huge disparity between the two of us. I think the one that's probably the biggest here is our number 8 running back, Breece Hall, who you have at 6. I have at 9. And I think a lot of it is just new regime. We don't know what they're going to do yet with that backfield. So much of his value's been tied to that receiving work, but it's not enough for me to say like he doesn't belong in this tier. You know, this is another one. I called these the high value players, and these are almost the guys that I'm looking at trading immediately right now because it feels like there's no higher value running backs outside of those top 3 blue chippers than these players right here.
Yeah, and the only kind of line that I drew in the article that I wrote is I did put Saquon Barkley in a tier of his own because you look at all these other guys, Amari Hampton, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, they're all on the right side of the age curve, and Saquon Barkley is on the wrong side of the age curve. But I think when you look at immediate production, Saquon Barkley outscored all of these guys last year. He's probably going to score them all again this year. But there is a lot of risk when a running back turns 28 years old. I mean, we can point to the outliers. Sure, Derrick Henry still out here doing it at 39 or whatever he is now. Like there are outliers out there, but just this time last year, Christian McCaffrey was the consensus running back 1 in Dynasty. And then what happens? One injury plagued season completely falls off the cliff. We can look back 2 years ago. Austin Eckler was the RB3 in Dynasty running back rankings. One injury plagued season, he falls outside of the top 40. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Saquon Barkley, but just let's do this kind of doomsday hypothetical situation right now. Let's say Saquon Barkley has a 2025 that looks just like Christian McCaffrey's 2024. Picks up a preseason injury, can't play, comes in for a couple of games, looks sluggish, gets re-injured, and then his season is over. Saquon Barkley's fallen outside of the top 20 in Dynasty ranks. Like right now, he's being propped up because of the production, but when you get to that age, it is just a matter of time before the floor falls out from under you. And it's not like a quarterback or a tight end where you see this kind of gradual decline. You just fall off. And that could happen to Saquon Barkley. Might not. You might still get 3 or 4 years of production. you might not get any years of production, and that's where the risk lies.
That's the crazy thing with Saquon too, is because we've seen how good he can be, but there's also years where it doesn't even have anything to do with age or production or ability. There's just been so many years of injury, right?
Hmm.
And there's just things that we can't predict. And Dave, I know it's something that gets talked about every single year is that the RB1 never repeats ever. Like the
Yep.
top player in fantasy rarely ever repeats. So for Saquon Barkley, I know a lot of
LaDainian
people.
Tomlinson was the last guy that did it. I think
I think it was like
LT put together five.
Antonio Brown at the wide receiver spot, and I think
Uh,
LaDainian Tomlinson at running back might have been it. But like every year it was a new person. It was Christian McCaffrey and then David Johnson and then Jonathan Taylor, and it just kept cycling. And maybe that same guy happens once every 3 or 4 years. But with Saquon Barkley, I don't think we have that luxury anymore to say it could happen in a couple more years. So
yeah.
I get it. Like you kind of have to put him as the de facto number 4 running back because he's so good. But this is Saquon. I'm looking at all these guys here. Even to
An actionable spin is to move off of Saquon for anybody else in
yes,
this tier. Like if I
yes.
could trade away Saquon Barkley and get Omari and Hampton in a second round pick, whew, not thinking twice about that.
What if you're going down to the next tier? Are you willing to do that? Let's open up this next tier so we can talk about this.
And
Okay,
I'll love to talk about the first guy in this tier because I put him in a tier of his own in my article too. And
perfect.
do you know what I labeled that? Well, read the name.
Let's get there. Let's get there. No spoilers. All right, at 11, this is tier number 3. These are the rookies and stars with concerns. At 11, or excuse me, at 10, Josh Jacobs. At 11, Bucky Irving. At 12, James Cook. 13, Trevion Henderson. 14, Kyron Williams. 15, Quinshon Judkins. 16, RJ Harvey. And at 17, Chase Brown. So, Dave, open up. What's that tier called?
I have Josh Jacobs in a tier by himself, and well,
Called
Saquon
the Josh
Barkley was in
Jacobs
a
tier?
tier by himself. It is the arbitrage Saquon Barkley tier, is what I
Nice.
called Josh Jacobs tier because I don't think people realize like how good he has quietly been over his career. And it's basically like if you take everything that we love about Saquon Barkley and just like turn the dial down just a little bit, you basically get Josh Jacobs. He's a year younger. Last year, Saquon Barkley was the RB1 in scoring. Josh Jacobs was the RB6. Saquon Barkley has 3 years and $20 million annually left on his contract. Or, I'm sorry, 4 years, $20 million annually left on his contract. Jacobs has 3 years and $12 million left annually on his contract. Barkley was drafted second overall. Jacobs was drafted 24th overall, but they're both first round talents. Barkley was on the second best rushing offense last year. Jacobs was on the fifth best rushing offense. So very similar profiles on running backs who are workhorses, getting up there in age, but not completely falling off the age curve yet. They catch passes, they score touchdowns. It's just Jacobs is going to be a lot cheaper, and you might not get the overall RB1 production, but you're still getting top 10 production from Jacobs. And he's one of those guys that I think just gets forgotten in dynasty circles. And yeah, you talk about trading down. Like if I could take Saquon Barkley and get a first round pick and Josh Jacobs in return all day, not thinking twice about that.
So that's what I want to look at here. Actually, I'm looking at this as we're talking about it. Josh Jacobs, and let's call it a 2026 first. Let's call it a mid first.
Yeah.
It's almost exactly even. The Jacobs and
Yep.
mid first gets a little bit of a push there. By the way, this is over on Keep Trade Cut. I know how people have their emotions about it. Whatever, it's a crowdsourced thing. It was the only way for us to talk
Even a
about it.
late first, though, I think I'd be okay with it. Like if I
Yeah,
could get a late first and I'm getting Colston Loveland and Josh Jacobs for Saquon Barkley, I'm happy with that return.
it's gonna sound so stupid, and I hope this doesn't go out of context. I feel like you're getting the same guy. You really are getting the
Yeah.
same guy, and I don't have nearly as many injury concerns with Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
And I'm doing that. I'm doing that the whole time.
And he's
Uh,
younger than all the guys we're going to talk about later. Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. He was drafted so young coming into the NFL that I think he gets lumped in with those older veterans, but he's still just 26 years old. Like he still
yeah,
is quite a few years younger than all of those other productive veterans that we'd want to lump him with.
yeah. Um, some of these other names here in this tier, the rookies, and I'm curious about this because we have that rookie fever that happens around NFL draft time where everyone wants the picks, but then we always talk about it, once you draft these players, they lose their value. But then there's so much, like, we could say the quiet part out loud. There's so much fantasy and dynasty content going on around these times where it's like a guy like RJ Harvey is now beloved because he's on the Denver Broncos, and little by little by little a player like that gets steamed up rankings. And it's just, at some point, do you sit there and say, you know what, I might want to trade my RJ Harvey or my Quinshawn Judkins or my Trevion Henderson now while the perceived value is super high? How do you feel about that, Dave? Because I think I'm about to start going on a kick here where I'm just going to go get the Joe Mixons and Alvin Kamara's and Derrick Henrys of the world and just keep renting my running backs and never look back.
Yeah, I think that's a good process. And I don't know if you're familiar with EK Baller on Twitter, but he put together this year-round chart a while back and kind of talks about it month by month when veterans spike in value and when rookies spike in value and kind of what you should do at that point in time. And right now, where we're at in May, this is peak rookie season when rookies are valued higher than they ever are and veterans are valued cheaper than they ever are. So as we get closer to camp and people start looking at depth charts and realizing, oh, Alvin Kamara is probably in line for 300 touches again this year, and Derrick Henry is still the RB1 in Baltimore, people are going to start raising their value and fading the rookies. But we are at the point now where it's just good business to trade your rookie picks in. And I talk about this. I mean, every single year, hours before a rookie draft kicks off, I always start sending trades, my picks for veterans in return. And I think I told you, Alfredo, just last week, I was able to take the 206 in a draft and flip it for Ken Walker, just because it was a guy with rookie fever, had Ken Walker on his roster for a few years, wanted to, and I forget who he got,
It's
probably
great.
RJ Harvey or something like that. But that's exactly like that trade is never happening in training camp. Like
No,
nobody is giving away Ken
no
Walker
shot.
for a future second. But if you can hit that window hours before your rookie draft, that's when dynasty managers want to get as many picks as possible. So definitely good business.
By the way, RJ Harvey just 2 years younger than Josh Jacobs. Want
Yeah.
to throw that out there? I
Uh-huh.
just wanted to throw that out there, let everybody know. Okay, so with these rookies, let's say you kind of let's put them in a bucket right now and talk about just these guys. If there's one rookie from this grouping of Trevion, Quinshawn Judkins, RJ Harvey that you're saying, you know what, I kind of want to cash in right now, who's the guy that you are trading away from your team right now?
Uh, I think I don't know. Quinshon Judkins is my
Sorry, that was just the
Quinshon,
quick response. I think, I don't know.
yeah, Quinshon Judkins, he's my I don't want to say least favorite, but like he's my least favorite running back in this tier, but he's also probably going to garner the smallest return. I think if you're looking to just strictly cash in on hype, Trevion Henderson is a guy that I still see randomly going third, fourth, fifth overall in rookie drafts. So there's going to be somebody out there that would want to overpay for Trevion Henderson. So he'd be the one that would net the biggest return. Um, RJ Harvey, though, I don't know if he's a guy that I know you made the joke about his age, and he's definitely an older guy. His age doesn't concern me the same way it would for other running backs. Taj Brooks, for example, same age as RJ Harvey, but he has a lot of tread worn off of those tires because he was a running back his entire college career. RJ Harvey was recruited as a quarterback. He didn't start playing running back until 3 years ago. So even though he's technically up there in age a little bit, he doesn't have the same wear and tear on his body most 24-year-old running backs would. Sorry, I'm like bouncing
But
all over.
he's got a different wear and tear on that shoulder though when he takes. I'm just kidding. That's not a real
he,
thing.
he
I'm not
might.
actually. I know,
I,
but I'm not actually saying that. That was just, yeah.
but to roundabout get back to your question, I think if I needed to cash in on one of these rookies, Trevion Henderson is a guy that's going to garner the biggest return. Like I'm sure right now you could probably trade Trevion Henderson for Josh Jacobs straight up, and I would do that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we both have Josh Jacobs ranked as our running back 10 in Dynasty. And then at Trevion Henderson, you've got him at 12. I got him at
Whew.
14. So
I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut right now. Trevion Henderson is the RB9. Josh Jacobs is the RB16. So
let's do.
you might
I'm
be able to take Trevion
sending.
Henderson right now and get Josh Jacobs and additional players or picks on top of it.
Yeah, go out and send all your trades for Josh Jacobs right now. And honestly, looking at
If
the
Josh
other
Jacobs isn't on the thumbnail for this video, I'm going to be very upset.
Josh Jacobs, you are on the thumbnail. There you go. Honestly, I'm looking at some of these other veterans here too. Bucky Irving, I know, is the new hotness. James Cook
I noticed we're way lower than consensus on Bucky
on
Irving
Bucky Irving.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought I was
yeah.
going to have to sit here and, you know, talk smack about Bucky Irving, but then you came in with the same exact rank as me. We both have him as RB11, and his consensus ranking right now is RB7.
So to me, there's a difference between like I'll get caught holding the bag with an older running back, a Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. I know exactly what I'm getting, and I'm fine knowing that I'm going to get one more year of it. What I don't want to do is pay a premium for a player like a Bucky Irving, where the thought process is, oh, I might get 3 or 4 years of this guy who could even get me elite potential. And I know how like scared that sounds for dynasty football. I'm not trying to pay up those assets for that, if that makes sense. It's like one of my friends who loves cars, and all he does is pour money into his cars, and he'll go and he'll get like a whatever, like 2003 Honda, and then put a bunch of parts on and all these other things. He drives it around. He's so happy that it's fast and he's got all these cool things. I don't know anything about cars, so I'm not going to get into it. But then usually within three
Big
to four
old
months,
spoiler.
he tells me that something is broken and he's got to go fix it. And that car never lives up to the potential, but he's put so much money into it. And that's what I don't want to do with the Bucky Irvings and the Chase Browns and a lot of these other running backs who it's like, oh man, but they could be really, really good. You know, why don't I just go get the guys that are really, really good? And it's going to cost me a lot less. I know exactly what I'm getting, and I can earn a little bit of value on top of that. Let me go and just drive my Volkswagen. It's great. I love it.
So I have a rule in Dynasty, and people who watch this show for years are aware. But if a day three running back gets to the point in value in Dynasty where you can get a first round pick in return, you have to take that deal. And sure, people are going to point to Kyron Williams like, oh, you idiot, you sold Kyron Williams for a first round pick 2 years ago. I will happily live with that process because I've also traded Damian Pierce and Jordan Howard and James Robinson. And we remember the Kyron Williams because he is the outlier. But for every Kyron Williams, there are a dozen Pierces and Robinsons and Zamir Whites and Ty Chandlers and these guys that spike in value artificially. Now, I could be totally wrong. Bucky Irving could end up being a great player for the next decade. But more often than not, you're going to be happy that you sold these day three running backs. So I've got a bucket in my article called Day Three Fire Sale, and it is Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, and Tyrone Tracy. I'm in a league where I got 2 first round picks in return for Bucky Irving and Chase Brown. And maybe I could be wrong. Maybe Chase Brown is going to be an RB1 again this season. Maybe Bucky Irving is going to be the long-term running back in Tampa Bay. But more often than not, if you trade away your day three running backs for first round picks, you're going to end up on the right side.
Hey, Dave, what would you rather have, Bucky Irving or Joe Mixon and a 2027 first round pick?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Mixon and the pick. I'd almost Mixon is kind of a throw-in for me at this point. I'm afraid that the end is near, like really
Okay.
fell off a cliff, but that's the type of thing I like to do where if I am getting a pick, and it happened last year in a league that I'm in where I made a trip pick and one of the throw-ins in like week 2 was Kareem Hunt, a guy that I had no interest in, but then I got a week of RB1 production from Kareem Hunt, which on a 0 running back team is very valuable. And even if you're just getting, you know, a month or 2 months from Joe Mixon, there is some value there. But really, the first round pick is what I'm looking for when I'm trading these guys.
All right, let's go to the next tier. This is going to be tier number 4. And I call this old guys and Caleb. And at 19, or yeah, at 18, man, the numbers got all jumbled up in this spreadsheet. I'm doing the Lord's work right now. At 18, Christian McCaffrey. At 19, Caleb Johnson. At 20, Derrick Henry. 21, Alvin Kamara. 22, Joe Mixon. And 23, David Montgomery. And really, this feels like that tier where I just want to buy into a bunch of these guys and go and trade a second round pick for a Derrick Henry and try to trade a second round pick over there for an Alvin Kamara. See if I can trade like a couple of threes for a Joe Mixon. That probably doesn't happen, but you know, I'm fine. I'll trade a 2027 second for a Joe Mixon and let future Alfredo deal with that. David Montgomery's in that same boat. Caleb Johnson, I think, is kind of the only guy from this tier that becomes untouchable. No one's drafting him and then trading him unless they drafted him for the process of trading him. But the guy I just don't want, Dave, and it's ironic because we both have him highest in this tier. Actually, I have Caleb Johnson highest, but Christian McCaffrey. I've been asked in fantasy, is he the top pick? Is he a first rounder? Where is he in regular redraft? Where is he in dynasty? And I almost felt like I needed to put him at night. Honestly, I kind of want to make the change now as we're talking about it and move Christian McCaffrey lower than Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. He worries me because he's the kind of guy that, yeah, he could be done in a year or two, just like these other older running backs, but he could also just not make it past week 1 because of this degenerative and chronic injury that he has with his Achilles. And I think that worries me the most. And honestly, I'm kind of upset that I kept him so high in the rankings here.
Yeah, I mean it's the risk and reward here, and that's again going back to the article that I wrote. I have all of these guys tiered together. I moved Caleb up with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson and R.J.
Okay.
Harvey, and just kind of lumped all the day two backs together. But I think value wise, he definitely falls in with these veterans and Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery. I'll even lump James Conner and Aaron Jones, who are a little bit lower on, but they probably fit in this same group as just over the hill productive veterans. It's buyer beware. Like you could be drafting just a dead asset. I mean, Derrick
Sorry,
Henry.
you got me for a second there. Had me in the first half.
Like Derrick Henry has defied the odds, right? Like we've been
Right.
talking about his downtick in efficiency for years, and he just keeps coming out, and it doesn't matter. Like just keeps churning out RB1 season after RB1 season. But if he comes out this year and is sluggish and can't break tackles and finishes the year with 900 yards, it's not going to surprise anybody, right? Like you say, yeah, like good for him. He defied the odds for 3 years, and now Father Time caught up to him like it always does. And if Alvin Kamara comes out and isn't the same guy he's been in years past and doesn't have the breakaway runs and doesn't break tackles, kind of expected that. If Joe Mixon comes out looking like the player he looked in the final month of the season, we'd say, yeah, Joe Mixon, he's had 8,000 carries in his NFL career. Of course, it was going to come to an end eventually. So these are the guys that are so cheap that I think it's worth acquiring them because, like you said, you could probably get Joe Mixon for a pair of thirds right now. And I think that the risk is baked into that cost. This is a tough tier to stomach buying, but if you can get them for cheap enough, it's worth it.
By the way, I totally misspoke. And I was like, oh, you can probably get Derrick Henry for a second. Maybe. It depends on the person. Um, might take a little
In
more.
an
It depends.
analyst league, you're probably getting him for a third. I
That's
mean,
the
like
thing,
everybody
right?
is trying to pivot off of these older running backs in the leagues that we play in.
That's the thing is when you get around the people that are the self-proclaimed savvy dynasty managers, they just want to get rid of the olds and they will take whatever you give them so that they don't have this sunk cost on a player that they're just gonna be stuck holding on to. I think it could happen, man. I think you could honestly make that trade and you're not totally sunk there. Dave, the next tier, the guys that may not have jobs in a year. That's what I called it. And this is, it's not a cute bunch. 24, Tyrone Tracy. 25, Chuba Hubbard. 26, DeAndre Swift. 27, Tony Pollard. 28, James Conner. 29, Zach Charbonnet. And 30, Travis Etienne. Now, it's interesting because I think a guy like Travis Etienne, even though we have him at the bottom of this tier, is one good season away under Liam Cohen from jumping into the Chase Brown area again and being one of these guys that we're like, well, man, he's only 26 and he's coming off such a good year and maybe they bring him back or he signs with another team. And it's interesting because, like you said earlier, running back values change oh so much. I think the same can be said for a lot of these guys. This tier, I think, makes me the most nervous about either rostering or buying into. And I
Yeah.
think I want to get rid of everybody from this tier if I have them on my roster.
Like I said, it's funny how our consensus rankings kind of mirrored the article I wrote, and we had similar labels. Mine was productive veterans, dot, 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 for now, because
Yeah.
these guys can all just see this volume disappear immediately. So this is a tier that I really have no interest in buying into. If I'm being honest, a lot of these players scare me. I think Zach Charbonnet is the one that I like because we've seen that when the opportunity arises, he smashes when he gets those spot starts when Kenneth Walker is hurt. We've also seen that he does start to eat into some of the passing down work. And with the rumors swirling about Charbonnet or Walker potentially getting moved, either Zach Charbonnet can get the Seattle backfield to himself, or he can get traded to Chicago or Washington, or he can be on a better offense with a full workload. So I think he's the one that I like. Tyrone Tracy, I think that he's cheap enough. Like you're not getting a first round pick in return for him like you would for Chase Brown or Bucky Irving. So he's another one that is kind of cheap to buy. But DeAndre Swift, they drafted Monangai, and there's rumors about J.K. Dobbins and Nick Chubb. It doesn't sound like DeAndre Swift can hold on to this job for long. Carolina Panthers, they already went out and they brought in running backs. They've got Jonathan Brooks hopefully coming back in 2026. Chuba Hubbard seems like he is just kind of teetering on volume that might not be there for long. Tony Pollard, good player. He's looked good in Tennessee the last couple of years, but so is Tajay Spears. And we could see those sliders move in either direction. So this entire tier right here, outside of Tracy and Charbonnet, are guys that I'd be trying to move off of pretty aggressively.
I will say the more I looked at this tier, I think the two players that I'd be, if I had to, you tell me you need to go and trade for someone from this tier. I think the two guys that I am doing it for, and this is probably just going to get met with venom from the viewers, is James Conner and Travis Etienne. Because I think like the
Like
Etienne
Conner,
thing
sure.
is like we've already got Etienne as low as possible. And really, there wasn't a big change that happened to this team. They went out and they got Bashal Tutin in the 4th round. I know there's a lot of people that love Bashal Tutin. I'm not one of them. So I think I still kind of like the upside of Travis Etienne. If he can do what even Rachaad White was doing last year, that's a top 24 running back, in a Liam Cohen offense, I think I'm kind of cool with that, and it doesn't cost me a lot. The James Conner thing, I think, is he is the perfect rental running back. If I'm just saying, man, my team is ready to compete this year, I just want a guy that week in, week out, I know I can plug in as my RB2, and he has some touchdown upside. James Conner seems like that guy. We were talking about trading seconds for Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon and players like that. Like someone might just hate James Conner enough to give you him for 2/3, and you can make your move there, Dave.
Yeah, I think I do like Connor just because he's so cheap. Like
I know you
a
also like Trey
single third.
Benson.
I do, but I think a single third would get it done for James Conner. And if you're getting like 1 year of the production we've gotten from James Conner over the last couple of years, that's worth a third round pick in my opinion. I think my fear with Travis Etienne though is we are so removed from like I don't think you could look at his draft capital as something that means much anymore because we are a GM and 2 head coaches removed from the regime that drafted him. And you got to remember, they didn't even want Travis Etienne. That was the Urban Meyer team, and he was all in on Kadarius Toney. And when Kadarius Toney got sniped, they pivoted to Travis Etienne, thinking that he could be that same type of dynamic playmaker. And it just hasn't really worked out. We saw Tank Bigsby carving out a bigger role last year. And the efficiency for Etienne has been bad. He was 135th in rushing EPA last year, which was one of the
Team was
worst
also
among all
horrible,
running
though.
backs. What was that?
The team was also just horrible last year.
It was, but Tank Bigsby was very efficient with the similar role. And I think that when you look at Liam Cohen, what happened
Didn't
last
lead to
year,
anything.
I think Travis Etienne is almost identical to the situation Rachaad White was in last year, where Rachaad White, the volume was there, the production was there, but the efficiency was terrible. And then Liam Cohen came in and just pulled the work from Rachaad White and gave it to Bucky Irving, who is the better player. And I think Travis Etienne right now kind of teetering on this very poor efficiency. Now with James Gladstone and Liam Cohen, 2 young guys that I can assure you are looking at these efficiency metrics, them going out and getting Bashal Tutin, still having Tank Bigsby there. I worry that we could see something similar to Tampa Bay last year, where Rachaad White is the guy that gets pushed to the back burner and still does have some decent weeks where he can make up for it with pass catching work. But I just worry that we're going to see Travis Etienne, Bashal Tutin, and Tank Bigsby all involved in this running game. And that concerns me a little bit. And that's why I'm staying a little bit lower on Etienne. But I mean, we're both in the same spot. We got him at 30 and 31. So it's not like either of us
I'm
are
out here defending
the
Travis
table.
Etienne as the trade target, and I have him ranked 1 spot lower than you.
And we're both ahead of consensus. I mean, he's 33 on keep trade cut. So I guess
Right.
everybody's soured on Etienne at this point. Yeah, go out and buy him. Why not?
Yeah, like I'm doing it right here on keep trade cut, where Travis Etienne is, I mean, 2/3 is worth more than Travis Etienne right now in a dynasty league. Like to me, that's worth it. A guy that's a year removed from being a top 5 fantasy running back, just on the off chance that he can do it again, even if it's
Yeah.
for a year. Those 3rd round picks, man, there's such lottery scratchers in rookie drafts. Like they oftentimes don't mean anything. So if I can give a 26 and 27 3rd round pick for a Travis Etienne, a James Conner, I'm willing to do that. The price is just right for me. All right. Final tier. And this one, a tier has no name because I didn't think they necessarily deserved one. But here
Island
we
of
go.
Misfit Toys. You like that saying. This is the Island of Misfit Toys in this tier, right?
Yeah, I'll give him that. At 31, Najee Harris. where you and I have a little bit of a disparity there. Actually, this is the most dissension between our rankings in this final tier.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and I was like, you know what? They don't get a name. We hate
Yeah,
you.
I see. Like, we don't agree on anybody in this tier besides
No, we do.
Scatterboo.
Kip Scatterboo. What's up,
Yeah.
man? Okay, so at 31, Najee Harris. At 32, Cam Scatterboo. 33, Isaiah Pacheco. 34, Bashal Tutin. 35, Aaron Jones. I'm not going to call him Aaron Jones Sr. It just feels weird. And at 36, Brian Robinson. Now, Dave, where our biggest discrepancies lie is you are much higher on Najee Harris. I am much higher on both Isaiah Pacheco and Brian Robinson. So much so to the point that before the show, I had to text you and be like, hey, man, these guys are not in your top 40. What's up? Was that intentional? And you're like, yeah, they're sorry, Joe. They're ass.
Yeah.
I did it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pay the
I mean,
fine.
they're just not that good. And, I try to polish the edges a little bit when we're recording live. But yeah, those three letters kind of sum up how I feel about these guys.
That's wild to me. Isaiah Pacheco is. What makes you say that he's not good anymore? I need to know this because I know we saw him come back and he wasn't nearly as efficient, but he's also coming back off a broken leg. So why am I seeing him and Brian Robinson for that matter as these two guys as so much more valuable because they're still starting running backs in good offenses, and at least Isaiah Pacheco, like they really don't have much else there. I know they drafted Brashard Smith in like what was it, the 5th round, and they still have Kareem Hunt that I don't know that he was all that efficient as the year went on either. So where's the poop? Like why is Isaiah Pacheco not in your top 40?
I mean, he's been in the league for 3 years now, and 2 of those 3 years, he was outside of the top 100 in rushing EPA. He's another guy that is very, very, very inefficient, and I think that he's a very fun running style that I think resonates with fans because he's exciting to watch. Like, you don't have to be a scout or anything to say, like, that guy is fun. Like, the way he runs is fun. Like, he punishes the earth with every single step that he takes. But Elijah Mitchell is also in the picture now, and Brashad Smith is going to put a huge cap on any pass catching upside we were hoping for. And Kareem Hunt was good last year. And Kareem Hunt doesn't have the game breaking breakaway speed that he did early in his career, but he still, wouldn't be a running back show if I didn't mention Taj Brooks, has that sort of style to his game where he just isn't losing yards. He's not a liability on the field. He's going to take what would be no gain and turn it into a 2-yard gain. He's going to take what would be a loss and turn it into a neutral play. And every once in a while, he'll turn that 5-yard gain into a 6-yard gain. He just keeps his pads down, keeps the piles moving, and he is a patient and fluid runner. And I know Pacheco came back from the injury last year, but didn't have any opportunity to carve out a role behind Kareem Hunt. And that was, almost 2 months that he was back in the fold and had, 118 in rushing EPA last year. And even before the injury, his EPA was terrible. So I just get really worried about the efficiency for Pacheco. A fun player, and I think that he's going to continue having a role here. But we see these day 3 running backs, especially round 7 running backs, flame out so quickly. And I just think that's where we're at with Pacheco.
See, I look at him and it's the eye of the beholder here is so different. I'm going glass half full in this because I'm seeing a guy that I can get at a discount who was a top 15 running back in fantasy in 2023, who's got touchdown upside in an offense that really has lost their identity with Travis Kelce not being the same and with the wide receiver situation being so fluid as it is right now with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And I don't necessarily see Brashard Smith as a guy that's coming in and taking a monster role from Isaiah Pacheco, and I don't see Kareem Hunt as a guy that's really an issue in that backfield. A guy that did not have a job until a bunch of injuries happened. So it's interesting how you see it as Pacheco can be the guy that could fall off here, and you don't want to be holding on to that. I look at it as, man, if there's someone else that's valuing him as the RB 40, I want to make that trade immediately and have that on my team. I'm not too worried about the EPA stuff when we've seen that he could just be a top 15 running back, even if it's for a season or two. If the price tag is going to be a 3rd round pick or something like that on someone who's just done with Pacheco, I'm all in. I'm all in on that. And similar stuff with Brian Robinson Jr., who it's yeah, sure, we don't necessarily have a monster ceiling with him, but we know he's probably going to be a top 30 running back, especially on an offense that keeps getting better. That's what he's been doing the last couple years. And I know Eckler comes in and takes away a little bit of that receiving upside, but I'm okay with these guys where they are. I'm not standing on the table saying they need to be top 24 guys, but I I can't not have them in my top 40. That seems out of place for me.
I get that, but when I see these guys that I don't think are great football players and the efficiency indicates that they probably aren't great football players either, and I see them on a downslope in value, I'm the type of guy that would just rather rank them very low and just continue to try to ride that down wave and try to catch them on a hope that they swing back up. And when you look at both of these guys, Isaiah Pacheco and Brian Robinson, you go to their keep trade cut pages and you can look at how their dynasty value has been trending, and both of these guys for the last year have just been on a downward trend.
And I'm
And
fine with
it's
that.
yeah, and if you wanna buy and think that that's going to level out or tick back up at some point, I wouldn't blame anybody for taking that risk, but typically, when I'm betting on depreciating assets in Dynasty, I want it to be profiles that I really, really believe in, guys who have strong efficiency, guys who have good draft capital. Brian
Hmm.
Robinson and Isaiah Pacheco, they don't have either of those for me, so when I see them starting to trend down in Dynasty, I just wanna get out from under it before I, and end up regretting it.
Is okay. So then is because all those things you mentioned there sound a lot like a guy you have ranked higher in this one, Najee Harris, who you have him at 28. I have him at 36. The only big difference there is Najee Harris has obviously he has a couple of big seasons early in his career, but the efficiency has been terrible as of late. But he has the draft capital. Is now he's in the Chargers though, and they draft Marion Hampton in the first round. Is why is Najee separated so much to the it's like 14 spots for you between Najee and Pacheco. Why Najee so much higher?
The first round draft capital is big. I mean, that's going to insulate his value. Like you said, though, I mean, he has also been trending down in Dynasty, but I think that first round draft capital is going to insulate his career longevity a couple extra years. And he's also playing in a much better offense. The Chargers have one of the best offensive lines in football. Of course, he's
The
going to
Chargers are a
lose.
much better offense than the Chiefs?
I mean, the running game and that offensive line, I'd argue so. I mean, last year we really saw the Chiefs' offense sputtering. It was a lot of just check down throws that moved them down the field, but it wasn't the run game, and it definitely wasn't the
Okay.
offensive line. They lost some big pieces in the offensive line as well. So I think the Chargers, I think Najee is going to be the lead back to start the season, and I think people don't want to hear that because everybody's so excited about Marion Hampton. I don't think we're going to see that switch until probably 4 weeks into the season, 8 weeks into the season. But Najee, he doesn't have the breakaway ability. We know that. I don't think he's logged a run of 20 plus yards since his rookie season, but he is not a liability. He's going to go out there and he's going to get the hard yards and he's going to move a pile. And I think that the profile, the first round draft capital especially, insulates his value in a way that you're not getting with Pacheco and Brian Robinson. But the
See, I could
efficiency for
not.
Najee was terrible too. I mean, yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
138th in EPA last year. It was bad.
If anything, I'm more likely to put these guys in the same bucket and have them in the same tier, but actually have Brian Robinson and Pacheco ahead of Najee, which I do. I'm more willing to do that. Honestly, it wouldn't have been a rankings show had we not disagreed at some point pretty vehemently. So I'm glad we did. But oh, you know what? No, this one. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Dave, because I saw this when we were putting together the show sheet of the rankings. Your distaste for Pacheco and Robinson is so much so to the point, I hope you know where I'm going with this, where you have a team's first, second, and third running back on their depth chart in the top 40 ahead of both of those guys. Do you
What
know what
team
I'm
is
talking
that?
about? The Rams. You've got Jarquez Hunter ahead of
Oh yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco in your dynasty rankings. Um, I'm not gonna say what I want to say, but what the bleep, man? What's Are you okay? Do you want to talk to
Jar-
somebody?
Jarquez Hunter could be good. He could be bad. Isaiah Pacheco, we know
What?
he's not good.
What? He's been a top 15 running back. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah, he had 1 year that was propped up by volume, and we see that all the time, but the efficiency wasn't there. It was a volume-based productive season. And those are just guys that I don't like all that much in Dynasty. And that's why I'm a little bit under market on Kyron Williams. And really the thing though, why I have Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter higher than most is because I kind of see the writing on the wall. Sean McVay has never been a guy that wants to invest premium draft capital or contracts into a running back. And we see Kyron Williams now, another guy who volume has been there, and that's been productive for fantasy, but the efficiency profile has just been abysmal. So now I look at Kyron Williams on the last year of his deal, back-to-back years that they've gone to the running back well in the draft. I think that they could be planning for life beyond Kyron Williams, whether that's Blake Corum or Jarquez Hunter, I don't know, but I'm going to be a little bit higher on both of those guys just because of the upside that they step into this very high volume role that Kyron Williams is currently in. That upside is enough that I would take the risk on that upside over a guy who has a pretty narrow path to production.
All right, I'm writing all these names down because I want to go make some trades when we get off the show now. Old people that Dave hates. Got it.
Well,
All
you're
right.
not going to find any rosters of mine with Pacheco on it. So if you're trying to
I'm
buy
not
Pacheco
making
for
trades with
cheaply,
you.
you're not going to be able to. I'm sorry.
No. I'm not stepping into your asylum, sir. I'm not. I won't survive in there. I can't do it. Although I can give you some Jarquez Hunter if you're willing to part ways with the first round pick. Is that what we're doing?
First rounder. I don't know about that.
Second rounder? Huh? Do it now. Do the trade. All right. We're going to be back again next week. We're going to keep doing these dynasty tiers as we rank out all these players for you guys, because May is dynasty month, man. And we've got running backs this week. Next week, it's wide receivers. And once we get to June, we're going to be switching back over to fantasy and getting excited, man. Fantasy drafts and the NFL season. We got the schedule release coming out. They've already started to drop some of these games, but tomorrow, maybe even today, Dave? Am I getting my dates mixed up?
It's supposed to be tomorrow. Wednesday.
The videos drop tomorrow. Yeah. I'm excited for the videos.
I can't stand this whole like, oh, here's one game and here's one doubleheader.
That's so weird. It's so weird.
The whole schedule, man. Like I don't.
Yeah. Get excited! The Bears play the Packers on Christmas.
Yeah.
All right.
Just give me the schedule, man. Cool. I don't need all this teasing.
Cool. All right. That's going to wrap it up for Dave and I. We're going to be back again next week. Like I mentioned, as always, I want to thank you guys for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, adios.